A few months ago, I was having dinner with a friend of mine when, out of curiosity, I decided to ask her about education in Thailand, particularly her own experiences as a student in the system. She took a few seconds to consider my question and provided a one-word response. Now, I know everyone in this room has gone through a difficult time in your life. Suffering is a fact of life. But based on this conversation, it seemed to me that this prolonged suffering didn't serve any good purpose. It didn't lead to anything other than the knowledge of having suffered. Most unfortunate was that these years could have been the most creative and transformative time of her life. That conversation made me reflect on my life. I'm a first grade dropout. I only studied in Thailand halfway through first grade, and then I moved to the United States where I started second grade and continued throughout graduate studies. In my line of work, I meet many bright young minds. And the interesting thing is that my friend's experience is not an isolated one. Whenever I ask young people, what's the biggest problem you want to solve? Most say they want to fix education in Thailand. Even students who come from great schools say we need to fix education in Thailand. This makes me wonder, how did education in Thailand become so broken? How did the joy of learning become so disconnected from the process of education? And what do we mean when we say it's broken? Is it just not producing the results that we want? Because if every cause has an effect, and every effect has a cause, then surely there must be a cause for this unwanted effect. Imagine if we could fix it. Imagine if every one of us has fond memories of school. We graduate with the skills and knowledge to lead happy, meaningful, and productive lives. What would that world look like? When I was young, I would often take apart electronic devices because I was curious how they worked, and I wanted to understand what was inside. And because I was a responsible kid, I would usually only take apart the devices that were already broken, because I knew that sometimes I couldn't put it back together the same way again. And this sense of curiosity has stayed with me throughout my many years as an educator. I've been teaching for 7 years now. Some of my experiences include teaching leadership in the US Army, coaching youth basketball in southern Thailand, and now lecturing at Thammasat University. And reflecting on my teaching and learning experiences, I've noticed that when classes went well or did not go well, it usually had to do with a few elements: teachers, students, content, and resources. Take a look at this picture. What do you see? The first thing I notice is the student. Look at the joy on her face, and look at her classmates sitting behind her. The second thing I notice is the teacher, full of support and encouragement. And then I notice what's on the board. I can't read it, but looking at their faces, it must be an interesting subject. But do you see what's missing? Do you see what might be missing when they leave the classroom, or what might have been missing throughout their entire lives? Some of you may be thinking supportive parents, money, books, school supplies. It's all these things, resources and opportunities the factor that teachers and students have the least control and where the greatest disparities exist. These disparities in turn lead to gaps in learning outcomes. But even without resources, learning can still happen. It's not impossible. It's just a little more difficult. This picture went viral on social media not too long ago. It's a picture of a third grader named Daniel studying outside a fast food restaurant in the Philippines. He's using the light from the restaurant to do his homework. Daniel is emblematic of all learners whose will to learn is so strong that they will overcome any obstacles in their way. If someone is motivated enough, he will find a way to learn, even without teachers and with few resources. Because at the heart of learning is the student. So what could possibly be broken? Some say that our teachers are not as good as they used to be. Some say our students are not as diligent as they once were. Some say our curriculum is not keeping up with the times. And some say we don't distribute resources equitably. There are many reasons for what's going on. But in my quest to take apart and try to understand this system, I've come to the conclusion that it's not broken. When we say something is broken, the implication is that it was once working, and now it's no longer working. Our education system is doing exactly what it was built to do. It's like an old car that doesn't offer a smooth ride, but gets you from point A to point B, even if you have to suffer a bit along the way. So maybe we have to ask ourselves, is point B really where we want to go? If we want to be a creative, entrepreneurial, thoughtful, and engaged society, maybe point B is no longer where we want to go. What kind of society do we want to become? Do we want to be an agrarian society or an industrial society? A stratified society or an egalitarian society? An autocratic society or a democratic society? It doesn't have to be one or the other, but we have to be honest about our vision and the vehicle we call education. Perhaps I can give you an example of a country not far from ours, China. China had an innovation problem. They were great at building something from a plan, but they hadn't been inventing anything new for many years. This is troubling for a country that over 1,000 years ago invented the compass, printing, paper making, and gunpowder. So the Chinese sent a team to Silicon Valley, to the big technology companies, Google, Apple, and Microsoft. The team wanted to know what these inventors did when they were young. And in each case, the inventors said they had read science fiction growing up. And so in 2007, China held their very first science fiction and fantasy convention, which up to that point had been disapproved by the Communist Party. China wanted a more innovative society, so they began to take the steps to get there. They were clear on their destination, but are we clear? We often look to Finland and Singapore as models because these countries consistently perform well in standardized testing and other metrics of student performance. Yet both countries are different in their goals and their approach. Simply copying a model will not work unless we know where we are and where we want to go. In high school, one of my most prized possessions was a water-resistant, portable sport cassette player. And inside this device, I would have the latest Thai pop singer on cassette. Now, many of you in this room know what it was like to use this device. You had to listen to what was on the cassette. You had to listen to it in the order on the cassette. You had to rewind if you wanted to re-listen to your favorite song. You had to fast forward if you wanted to skip a song you didn't like. And the rumor was that if you kept rewinding and fast forwarding too often, the tape would become stretched and your favorite singer would suddenly sing to a slower beat. Now, over the years, many other devices became available, and the cassette player saw gradual improvements in size, weight, and battery life. But it could not keep up with the rapid changes in technology and the ways that people wanted to listen to music. Could it be that our education system is an analog device in a digital world? Are we still stuck on the cassette? Many people try to solve this complex problem by looking at one aspect of the problem. More policies, more teacher training, more classroom time, less classroom time. The goal of education is to bring about learning in people, to develop human potential. And yet the system at times forgets the people it was built to serve. Of course, the system pumps out graduates. People go in and they have to come out. But the bigger question is, how was their experience? And who have they become? Think of your favorite teacher from elementary school. Do you remember what he or she taught you? Probably not. You probably remember how this teacher made you feel, and you remember the relationship that you had. You know that you learned something, even if you can't recall exactly what it was. That's okay. Knowledge is secondary. What's more important is how you applied that knowledge to your world. Your favorite teacher helped you better understand the world around you and the world inside of you. So how might we redesign the education system so that it's more memorable, more inspiring, more empowering? I don't have all the answers, but the teacher and the tinkerer in me thinks it's not about making the device a little lighter or a bit smaller, and it's certainly not about giving out more cassette tapes. Redesign is about a first grade teacher who asked, how might the children and I redesign the classroom together? How might the classroom support student growth and become the third teacher? In Miss Annie's first grade class, students can document their learning on the walls. They can take a quiet moment in the peace corner, and they can pet sit their pet fish named Buddy. Redesign is a visionary who asked, how might we create a generation of honest leaders who will improve rural Thailand? the Michai Bamboo School aligns learning and rural livelihood for its community of students, parents, and teachers. Here, families pay for tuition by planting 365 trees and performing 365 hours of community service. Redesign is about a pioneering team of educators who asked, how might we foster leaders for an equitable world? What skills do our students want and need in the 21st century? At GSSE, Thammasat University, we don't tell students what they're going to be when they graduate. We ask students, what kind of impact do you want to make in the world? And we provide the resources to support that vision while creating value for society. Let's face it, our world is becoming more complex and more interconnected. If we want critical thinkers, then we have to encourage our students to question and critique ideas. If we want creative problem solvers, then we have to give them questions for which no easy answer exists. And if we want collaborative learners, we have to allow them to learn as much from each other as they learn from the instructor. All these aspirations require a fundamental redesign of the education system, fundamental redesign of the classroom assignments and the learning experience. If you care about learning, if you care about schools, if you care about our country, and if you care about our future, please don't fix Thai education. It's not broken. Rather, ask yourself, what kind of society do we want to become? And how can we best redesign the education system to better support that vision? I believe that education should serve our greatest aspirations and unlock our highest potential. Most importantly, education must place the user above the constraints of the system. And as the portable cassette player has taught us, redesign demands revolutionary, not evolutionary changes. Thank you very much.